Bang, we're recording. Yeehaw. So, Kaylin, we were just launching into today's discussion, what we're going to do, those kind of things. I don't know if y'all actually read my emails, probably not, and I don't blame you. You just look for the Zoom address. But actually, in the last one, it said, bring your issues and bring your successes, or something like that. That's not exactly the word. Because what I did want to get to today is kind of the outgrowth of last week's. Last week, we were talking about training. Training on training is what it was called. This week, as I said, there was a board meeting. I've had conversations with several other APG people around the country, and some folks that have very kindred issues and programs that have very kindred elements to APGs. And what we were talking about is somehow doing and taking advantage of the technology that's available to us today to do training, but not just the cognitive parts, not just what is substance use disorder, what are the different elements, what are the different elements of treatment that we pull together, the structure, etc., but actually pulling together some curriculum for practicum that's an ongoing practicum. How do you deal with a 15-year-old who has no desire to get sober at all? Not the principals, not the organization. I'm talking about, what do you say to them? We could do some role plays. We could do some practicums. If we did it right, we could even take some of the staff members that are out there seeing clients every day and tie them on to these kinds of things so they could talk about. I was talking to little donkey, Don Quixote the other day, and he said, my big toe fell off and I think he's having a hallucination. What do I do about it? Well, what did you do? And do some of that kind of thing. The didactic practicum, the didactic curriculum is pretty easy. There's a lot of good ones out there, and yeah, there's stuff in our history and in notes and all sorts of things all over the place. Guys, if y'all could see my garage, you wouldn't believe the junk that's in there. Ferreting it all, and that's not counting the 10 by 10 by 10 storage thing that's full, and to the top of stuff.
You still haven't gone through that?
I have started to. I'm really starting to go through. Yeah, Robin's actually seen it. It's unbelievable. A lot of it is client stuff and shredding and getting rid of it is taking a lot of time. But the guys from Vanderbilt and another group out of a university dug through some of it and used some of it for something they were working on. But there's also a lot of other stuff in there. There's policies and procedures and blah, 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 blah. It goes on and on and on. Just unbelievable amount of stuff. The other day I ran across, here it is, as a matter of fact. Look at this. That's a cassette tape. It's a speaking engagement I did on alternative peer groups, John Cates. Dig this. This was only 20 years ago. Only 20. Not even halfway back, and I ran across it. I put it on. I found a thing that'd play a cassette tape and put it on there to listen to it. It's really interesting. I couldn't listen to all of it because it's just, but I told a really funny joke. I was really pretty good. I'm amazed. So there's lots of stuff out there. Getting it all together, getting it all organized, and then making it available not only on a didactic sense, but on an experiential sense on a national basis is where I think we ought to go. So, what do you think?
I love that idea. I don't know what the word for it is, but you were talking about the practicum. So if we had someone who's in training, let's say like an 18-year-old who's learning to work with, in a role of peer support for the teens, having a group that they can go to and run through, like, so this happened and this is how I handled it, and maybe they can go through tools that they can use to more effectively support the kids. So not real time, but kind of, support, just like if you were probably in a CDP program, or if you're learning to become a therapist and you work alongside another therapist and they're teaching you kind of how to do this. I don't know what the word is for that, but that kind of support would be amazing.
Well, we did it in the past, and we just it got lost. And I don't mean a little bit, we did it for decades in the past. But as some of the restructuring and things that would go on at different programs at different times, and managed care coming in, it just changed everything. We never were able to get it going. We never took advantage. Well, we didn't have it. We didn't have the technology. Yeah. I mean, yeah. I just had a vision as we're talking of actually, doing a role play between two. We could do two. I could do one right now with Robin. Robin could be the counselor. I could be, Don Quixote, and we could do one. Everybody else could be watching. We could record it, and then just like we're recording and putting these things, build a library of processes that go through and feedback, and everybody could give feedback. And John, when you did this, I had a client that did that. I know exactly what you're doing. And Robin, that was awesome what you did. He ought to see God, all sorts of stuff, that kind of thing. But and I think I don't feel like I have the expertise to do it on my own. I need input, and I need help, and I need folks to take part in this. So y'all think that it may be a good idea to do something like this?
Oh, I think it would be amazing. Because like you said, even if we have like a manual, the curriculum, it's totally different to have the experiential piece.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it would be helpful with new clients and new kinds of, y'all, again, like I said, I don't feel like I really have the experience to do this. My first thought is, okay, well, I'm kind of a jump in kind of guy. I'm like, well, let's get some folks together and have a meeting. We'll call it a program. And see what happens.
Well, that's like last week, John, you were saying, you just say you have a training, and then you have a training.
And it builds. That's what happens.
Figure it out.
All right. So we now have a national training program. God, let's write that down. The national training program began. The founding fathers, mothers, whatever, are right here. That kind of thing.
Oh, that's funny.
All right. So this gets back to what I sent y'all in your email. Let me know what your solutions and problems and solutions have been this week. And this is what I'm thinking. If we touch on those, it can help us start to build sessions. All right. Then we go ahead and let folks know that this training is not just for directors. This is line training. This is counselor training. Okay. Then we pull one of those issues and we just go ahead and jump into it and see what happens. We would have to build some behavioral objectives. Y'all know what those are. That's your goal. What's going to get learned. But we don't have to build an entire, curriculum. We just have to build one at a time, one thing at a time. So going back to problems and solutions and thinking about it in a training sense on a long-term basis, what kind of problems and solutions should we talk about this week? Do you might have?
Talk about it.
So, John, in our parents group, we have a family that's been in pretty much crisis from the moment we started back in March. Their daughter has been part of the recovery high school and has had clean time here and there. But since COVID happened, they seem to be in crisis. Like that right from the get-go, she was talking about how their daughter was wanting to take the dog for walks all the time, but then been getting loaded and meeting people to score and stuff like that.
And we could all see it a million miles away. Anyone she was talking to, we were like, and she had what, 3 positive drug tests, and she tried to explain why they were a false positive and her parents were buying it, and the insanity. We could all see the insanity except for them.
So what we're bringing to you is I don't know if we're in a place quite yet, or are we, to talk to this parent and say, look, you really got your head in the sand, and somehow do it in a kind and compassionate way of not saying you're a horrible parent, because that's not the intention. The intention is to help the parent see what they're not seeing, because I believe that's, as the parent group.
And what ended up happening, and this is so tragic, the daughter ended up taking 25
Benadryl plus.
Benadryl, almost died. Her heart was stopping in the ER, and was in the she's still in the hospital trying to get her heart to work on its own. Yeah, so I felt a lot of guilt, because I feel like we saw it coming. How do we step in as the APG to support the family and to point out the insanity when it's happening?
Okay. In building a class type scenario, see, this is a very, very common scenario. In building a class, a class scenario, is the behavioral objective is, and you always write these things with observable change. So the behavioral objective is to develop observable skills in addressing acute parental enabling. Does that sound okay to you guys?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Developing observable skills and addressing acute parental enabling. So that's what we want to see. We want to, especially a senior counselor. This is a senior counselor or parent coordinator skill. Okay. So this is a good scenario. One of the things that always happens in this kind of, that I have to ask is, all right, what tools are already available? Are there parent meetings going on?
Mm-hmm.
Were the parents in the parent meetings?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's not uncommon. They just sit there and they blah 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 and don't ever listen or change anything. Next question. Do you know if the family is using, if the family members are using?
I don't know.
Yeah.
My gut says no, but I don't know.
It's very common in these kind of things for the family to be using, and you have to include also prescription meds.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very common. And if that is happening, change in the family is as unlikely as change in the client, because actually the family probably has the disease also. And when there are cognitive processes going on, like a family group, and they're hearing this stuff over and over again, but they're not changing, they keep doing that, it's very typical for substance use to be there.
Well, and I'm curious if we can be doing something different in our parent group, because we have it set up so that we're not giving each other advice.
No cross talking.
Yeah.
That is actually the rule needs an exception.
Okay.
The rule is no cross talking unless it's directed by the facilitator.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so what in those scenarios, when we hear these, like, Molly's had 3 positive drug tests, but she's telling us, it was just because of the bagel she ate or something.
Yeah.
What does a skilled facilitator say to get that going?
Usually nothing in the meeting. Usually
Okay.
what will happen is after the meeting, the skilled facilitator will have maybe a talk with the sponsor, with their sponsor about, this is something that's going on, and then set up an appointment or a time to talk with the family member when it's safe and you can say some things they're not going to like to hear and those kind of things.
Got it.
Okay. And where practicum comes in is, okay, if we had a new somebody we're vamping up to be senior counselor of, one of your groups, we at this point would be talking about, all right, well, let's go through a little scenario where you're in the meeting and Michelle is going to say the things that she says all the time. You're the senior counselor. You've walked into the meeting. You're doing a touch with the family meeting, and you hear that, or you've heard it before and you're expecting it. What do you say in the meeting, if anything? And figure out, see what they say, see where they go with it.
Mhm.
Then go,
Got
okay, well, now it's after the meeting. What are you going to do? Who are you going to say what to? How are you going to say it? You can say one thing. There's a lot of different ways of saying something. Some of it's effective, some of it's not. And gauging who you're talking to and what's going to be the most effective with them is real important. And that kind of, to a point, gets down to talent. Finding that talent, because that is one of the big talents is, how do I put what to who, and being right about it. we all do that, but some of us are wrong, more than others. So family subject. One other thing here, parent.
You have a question.
I'm making some notes here.
Hey, John. So with the sponsorship process, is it the same as the 12-step fellowship of the family, the parents ask another parents, or is it kind of like the more experienced parents just step in and say, hey, here's my number, give me a call, this is, how's it, what's it like?
The answer is yes.
All of the above.
All of,
And it's like Al-Anon. It's a similar.
It's actually, though, there is a difference. There is a little difference, because what is the difference between a family member and an Al-Anon meeting? What's the difference? There's a basic difference. What is it?
Yeah.
There's somebody present. There's a staff present. The staff is looking over it. That's the difference. That's why what we're talking about here is staff training. How do you maintain the positive things that go on in Al-Anon while taking advantage of the interventive abilities of you supervising the group? How do you do that? How do you do that? It's called case management. Yeah, Robin.
Well, tell you from my experience being in those parent meetings, the power is in the group. The seasoned parents will reach out to, as your group grows and gets healthier, you can sick seasoned parents on those hurting families. You can tell, hey, Susie, you need to go talk to this person and tell them straight, and have them call and keep calling and checking on them, because that's the power of how this works,
Notice the term she just used. She said, you can, meaning the facilitator can sick these seasoned parents on this situation. Okay. That's the training. How do you, within the realms of appropriate, and positive and loving and giving process, how do you get the right parent to talk to the right, at the right time and everything? How do you do that? And again, you can set some things up. Of course, in every parent meeting, they usually will go over ad nauseum the need for sponsorship. There's some situations that arise. Sometimes it is helpful to have an Al-Anon sponsor. Sometimes it is not, because they're not used to having a case manager. They're not used. See, alternative peer group programs are not Al-Anon.
Mhm.
They're not AA. Alternative peer group programs are, and I'm going to say this in the loose sense, are treatment programs. Okay? But they have these softer elements that aren't residential or counsel, clinical counseling and those kind of things. But they are still looking after the 18 months to 4 years to stabilize. One of the big problems that's causing us to have such low success rates is our treatment programs only approach the very early days of recovery. Well, it should be approaching. They when I go in with my liver cancer and I go in, and get I don't have liver cancer anymore, but my liver transfer, and I go in and get my blood taken and all the tests and everything, I'm still in treatment for this, because that's what research says. Am I under the knife? Am I going through surgery? No, but it's still treatment. People are still looking after the things that need to be looked after. We need to do that same thing, and that's what the APG model does. It looks after the things that need to be looked after as long as they need to be looked after, instead of abandoning them to, oh, well, God will take care of it. Because he will, but not as, we know what we know now, so let's work with it. Training on the line people to do this stuff, because they'll come in with all sorts of stuff coming from their own history. You may have some, your own history is because we all got sober in the old ways, in the typical 25% success ways, or the 1 out of 17 ways. I've had people come in and talk folks out of going to residential. And you got a counselor that's running around talking somebody out of going to residential, because if you got to go to residential, you're just not ready. If you're ready, you don't need residential. They don't understand the disease. They're not doing what needs to get done. So this training thing becomes a pretty big deal, if you understand what I'm saying, because y'all are going to have a lot of new facilitators come along. Get ready. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a bumpy ride. So going back to this case, because if we're going to build a class, all right, so we've got the family, we got the parent meetings, and there's going to be something that has to be done in there. Robin alluded to it. There is movement. A lot of times the facilitators, we suggest to them that, okay, on the night of a meeting, and we know we can't do this right now, but on the night of a meeting, yes, you move from into the different meetings. All right, you move back and forth accordingly. Your steering committee is actually running the meeting. You're moving around and taking care of this kind of thing specifically. But then there's usually when there's not COVID, there's usually coffee or something after the meeting that everybody goes to it. The facilitator, as part of his job, goes to that also. And he'll move maybe table to table, just touching base and just saying and doing little things, taking care of little things that need to get done. And then in addition, there might well be a phone call later saying, hey, would you come on by? We need to talk a little bit. Or I'm going to do a Zoom call with you. Now we can do these Zoom calls where it doesn't take 3 hours for somebody to, talk through this. So that gives you some tactics. The strategy is, the big plan is help this family come to grips with that situation. Let me ask you, so the girl is in the hospital right now. It's a horrible time to talk to them. They're so guilt-ridden and shame and fearful that this won't be a good time, typically. I mean, somebody may really be able to pull that off. I'm not, Robin, would you talk to them now? Talk to the family now? Their failings? See, that's what I'm saying.
I think it would really depend on their response,
On who they are? Good point.
I think they need to be treated gently,
Okay.
But you can use it as a wake-up call. Like, now will you listen?
Yeah,
When we
So
get
when
to
you-
the other side, we really need to talk. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
the only thing we've done in that regard so far is just like gently asked what's the plan for aftercare to make sure she's going to long-term treatment, because they can't bring her home. She's not safe at home.
Okay, here's a little training thing here real quick, okay? What is it about an alternative peer group program and other programs that makes the difference between a client, and that includes the family, changing or not changing in a difficult situation? What is one of the key ingredients for that to happen in these programs? Why do we do alternative peer group programs? Why do we do them?
Support for one another,
Peer pressure.
peer pressure.
Relationships, peer pressure, support. That's it. Relationships, relationships, relationships. When you have a relationship with somebody, they can say things to you that make a difference that you don't want to hear. When you don't have a relationship, you're not going to listen to nothing they got to say.
And I'm gonna be quite honest at this point in time with Zoom and everything. You know, it's really hard to have that. I've met the mom once in passing when Michelle was going on a walk with her one day before this all happened, and you know, I don't feel like I really have a relationship with any of the parents. I hear that what's going on in their homes and with their kids and everything like that, but I believe in person to person. I'm just one of those people.
All right,
so
let me ask you a
do I
question.
need to get over myself?
Let me ask you a question.
I mean, let's be honest. It's me.
I hear you and I appreciate it. Let me ask you a question. Do you feel like you and I have a relationship?
I do.
I do too.
Well,
All right.
if you were going wayward, I'd probably say, yeah, well, what you're doing is kind of stupid, but I'd leave it at that. I wouldn't try and pry because I've never met you in person.
All right.
You know,
But the reason why I say I feel like we do too, we laugh, you know,
Yeah.
we tell stupid jokes. We laugh at each other's stupid jokes. You know,
I
that's
tell great
usually a
jokes.
pretty
I don't know
good,
what you mean by that.
that's usually a pretty good barometer. I did not feel that way when we first started talking.
Right.
Relationship is a feeling, in my opinion. I mean, I'm just talking, you guys. This is not like what are the neurological qualities of substance use. This is talking.
Right.
I didn't feel that way in the beginning, but now I do. And the more we talk, the deeper it gets. You know, when Michelle came on, her picture popped up, and I said, "Where are your cat ears?" You know? things are happening. You know, things are happening. We're making friends. You know, Kaylin, I've seen her operate in front of folks and mediate and stuff. And I am becoming friends with you guys. I am.
Right.
And it would make a difference when I talk to you if I needed to talk to you about something. Robin, I'm never going to be friends with because she's too bad. But so I hear what you're saying. We are so used to that face-to-face thing that this is a big shift. It is a big shift. But I'm hopeful because I've noticed that I'm making it. I am making that shift, at least with some people. So now I need to figure out what causes it and do more of it. And what I've boiled it down so far is it's the same thing on Zoom as it is in person. Regularly tagging up, interaction, you know, not just doing a speaking engagement or something like that, but interaction and really talking and jacking around and being goofy, which is, again, very easy for you, dude. And these are the kind of things that build these relationships. So in your program, it seems to be happening. I'll tell you this also, these relationships. I talked to a young man before this session. He's in the adult program, and he's actually building friendships he's never met face to face. because we're in Houston. You ain't doing meetings around here, all right? And you haven't been doing them for a while. So he's never met face to face with the APG group. But he had a relapse. He called them all. He talked to them about it. He talked in the meeting and when I was talking to him during our session a few minutes ago, he was at the edge of tears about how he felt about how Ray and some of the other guys had responded to his situation. So he's learning, he is building relationships via this. He is. If you can get face to face, that's good. But if you can't, you got to develop the tools you have. So, in answer to your question, maybe a few more Zoom face to face, just the two of you talks might start to build some relationship. You know what I'm saying?
That's a good idea, because the only face to face, the only talks that we've had for myself is within the group.
Yeah.
And so there isn't that intimacy of, Michelle and I just sitting with the parent.
Yeah.
And discussing life
Right.
and where they're at. But so part of it is getting over myself, and the other part is trying something different than just doing the parent group.
I hear you. Well, welcome to my world. As I said, I'm in Houston, looking for opportunities. Actually, what is here, going back to what Robin was talking, here is a great opportunity to deepen the relationship so that heavier things can be said a little bit down the road when some of the terror lightens up. This is a great opportunity.
And the positive in all this is that they are looking at long-term residential. They
Good.
That was without anyone saying anything to. That is what they're looking towards.
Good.
That's good.
Yeah, if they know that you're thinking about them and you're there, and I just, texts and little emails and things like that, just want you to know I'm thinking about you. I'm thank God she's okay. Call me if there's anything, little stuff. Now, in a training process, right, there's something we're doing right now that is very, very important to get across to your line people. All right. And what that is we're thinking it through, picking responses, and then deciding when and how to execute them. Okay? The first thing, though, is thinking it through. You think it through. You also seek information from other people on what they know about them, how it works. Might be a parent coordinator, might be a parent, a steering committee person, might be another counselor. And it takes time. It does take time, and but you have to make yourself do that instead of just instinctively going with whatever feels right at the time. And that includes, okay, I can't meet face to face with them anymore, so I had to think it through. Well, what can I do? Well, I can do Zoom. I can do phone calls. I can do texts. I can do emails. By the way, that's a lot more stuff than we could do in the 70s. Lots more stuff. Facebook. By the way, there's a new Facebook. Lifeway has a Facebook page, all right? But it's not the Lifeway program. It's called Lifeway Rocks, and please join it. There's folks coming out of 35 years ago who are, who remember and are signing up and becoming. It's a place to share memories, experiences. Please hop on. And if it's not a Lifeway, that's fine. I know you guys aren't Lifeway, but I'm just saying it's that kind of thing you want to do for your program too. This is not a thing that the staff takes care of. This is a thing that, the parents and the young people do, because they're going to do it either way. Have to check with your licensure processes and ethics processes to make sure that you structure it right and do the right thing. But social media is a real deal. Give it some juice, because we're talking about relationships, and social media is part of relationships now. It just is. You've got to find a way to walk that line. But so you got to think it through.
And
Go Go ahead.
John, can I say something in addition to that? Because that
Yeah.
was a good point that I found valuable this week, was to trust my instincts. And sometimes you just have to go with your gut and realize this is life or death. So you're not going to go wrong if you confront someone out of love and, with the thought that you're helping their family. So whatever you got to do, and you learn from it. So yeah, sometimes you just got to wing it.
Sometimes, and sometimes you're going to make a mistake.
Mhm.
We call them less than perfect days of
Well,
counseling. Or
you're never going to make them happy. Some of these families are very sick, but you're that thought in their head when something does go wrong and they come back and say, all right, now I'm ready to listen. Hopefully that's good.
Yeah, it always is interesting to me when they come back and they go, I kept hearing your voice. I'm like, good.
Well, and I think this is where APGs get a little funny, because it's, you're developing a relationship. It feels like a friendship. And in my friends' lives, I wouldn't say, wake up, your kid's going to overdose if you don't do something. And that's not how I would, word it, but it's that like professional and relationship, friendship, and combining. It's messy, right? Like,
Yeah, it is.
And I'm learning it. Like, I think I can shift and be like, yes, I can be boundaried around, we are developing a friend-like relationship, and it's my professional responsibility to speak up when I see something that's dangerous.
Right.
And I have sponsees and stuff that I've sponsored for years, and I have that relationship with them. I mean, I have no issue to take them to task if I see something, if they're going wayward, and doing it in a way that they know I love them, but that they're heading down a bad path. And like I said, though, I've met them in person, and that's something on me. I guess I'm gonna have to get used to technology, which has been a struggle for me.
Maybe not.
I think
Maybe not.
we also have workarounds. We're getting the teams together now here in Seattle in person, outdoors, and our current state of affairs in Washington State is you can gather with up to 5 people outside of your household. So 6 people total can gather. So we're facilitating the team meetings basically by making sure that they're splitting up into groups of 6 and providing pizza to help motivate them to get there. Yeah. And what we could do, James, just thinking out loud right now, is say, hey, when you drop your kid off, come say hi, meet me in person.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of those kind of things. If you'll think back through when I was describing meeting night, that after the meeting, everybody went to coffee.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. In the LSE, in the low socioeconomic programs, the way we got the parent meetings going, not the kids meetings, parent meetings going, was pizza night. They all came by the thousands wanting pizza, and there's just things, you just do stuff to get them together and that kind of thing. Y'all remember me talking about the soberware parties?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm telling you, when you start those things, you're going to have a lot of new people. A lot of new people will start popping up when you start that up. There was something that crossed my mind a second ago. All right, so let's suppose, Kaylin, how many people are working for you?
So I have a total of 4. I have 1 full-time programs coordinator, and then I have 3 part-time peer recovery support specialists.
Okay. And
we call them youth coordinators.
Okay. And they've gone through what kind of training? The youth coordinator. Let's start with them.
So they've gone through the 46-hour peer recovery support training. And then we also require them to fulfill, CEUs throughout the year. We require them to take, extra training on ethics and harm reduction and all of the things that are necessary, not only to keep the licensure up, but also to keep up to date on what's happening.
Right.
Because our model is we haven't really yet run into medically assisted treatment, but we do support all pathways that lead to recovery. We really stand by the whole meet you where you're at kind of thing. So I think that all of those elements are important to keep them up to date on training.
Yeah.
Right. So, and then I also encourage my staff to do like leadership trainings, any sort of like online offering of any sort of training within our recovery community, like the Communities Project. Michael King, I don't know if you've heard of him. He does a great online 2-day leadership training that, it's super simple, but like there's just some great, really simple, applicable, leadership tips, in there that my staff love and take away, and it's worked really well. And it's as simple as stuff like, asking everybody for feedback, right? Like asking the youth, like giving them a voice and asking them a feedback, with what's going on, like simple stuff that you think would be logical, but it doesn't happen as often as we think it should.
Right.
So, so that's the training that we ask them to go to. As far as like just formal training, it's the 46-hour peer recovery support, and then the CEUs, which depending on what class it is, depends on how long the training is. So
okay, the reason why I was
and
asking,
then the same thing for my no, go ahead.
No, that's fine.
You take the lead.
No, you take the lead.
No, I was just gonna say, as far as myself, I think that's the training, the basic training that is like across the board for all staff.
Yeah, it is one way or another. Yeah.
Right. Like that's pretty much in whatever order that comes about. It, depends on what, when they come in, but everybody goes through those basic trainings.
Okay.
And then I encourage everybody to attend conferences and anything and everything that they can do to get educated or walk away with more valuable tools to make us better.
Okay. In the program design that you're operating under right now, and given the scenario that we described with this family, that, would these facilitators, would they respond to this family? How would they respond? And let me change that. Would there be benefit in doing some role play and discussion about this scenario for them?
So are you asking, like, if I brought this scenario to them and did role playing with them, is that the question you're asking?
Yeah,
me?
would that be helpful to them and to you in the program?
Absolutely. I think because every situation is different and every staff member is going to handle it differently based on what their education and their experience in recovery is, right? So like I'm a 12-step girl, right? Like that's what my pathway was. 12 steps, abstinence, and so that's where now taking consideration the training that I've had around all pathways, it was really hard for me to wrap my head around that. It still is, right? Because abstinence is the only thing that ever worked for me. So I come at it from that standpoint, whereas I have another staff member who their journey was through Suboxone, right? So they're going to come at it from that standpoint. So I think having every staff member be able to go through that, and because this is the other thing too, is like I was, the whole time you guys were talking, I was thinking about a situation when you said we all have bad days kind of thing, right? And I'm thinking of this situation that I handled a couple weeks ago. I even called Hannah about it because I was like, I don't know, I'm not sure that I handled that correctly, because it was a very frustrating, overwhelming day. And I personally we had somebody bring drugs on site. They brought it on a trip. They exposed everybody on the trip. We have half of them that don't want to be sober. Half of them are like hanging on by a thread. Other ones are like, pulling 90+ days, who are like so excited. And all of a sudden they throw their drug of choice in the mix.
Yeah.
And there's 15 kids and we're on the way to the lake, and like I'm stuck with this decision to like turn the whole bus around and ruin everybody's day because somebody decided to bring drugs. Like it was just mayhem, you know, and to think of everything on the fly and hope that you're making the right decision. And then we got back and we found the drugs. They gave it up, like, and this beautiful thing happened where positive peer pressure caused the girls that were hiding it to bring it out and bring it to the surface and talk about it and process it with the group. And the half of the group was able to tell the other half, like, hey, we were triggered, this isn't cool, you can't bring this stuff here, you know, we want you to be here, but like you can't jeopardize everybody's sobriety, like all of that. It was beautiful. But then I have one of the moms come and tell me what a liability it was and how dare I take their kids on with drugs. And it was just like, so that was the first one, right? So mom hands me my butt on a plate for that.
Right.
And then the other mom of the girl who brought the substance and her friends on this trip, comes in and is like hysterical because she doesn't know what to do with her daughter. And her mom isn't 7 years sober, in recovery, in a 12-step program, 7 years. She has no clue what to do with her daughter. And I think that out of the whole frustration of the day, right, my answer to her is, and I'm embarrassed to even say this, is maybe this is just the pathway your daughter is going to take. And it was not okay for me to say that, right? Like I didn't support her. I didn't come up with a plan. I didn't say anything. I took my own frustrations of me unsure about handling the situation, right? The selfish, make it about me. And I said that to that mom. And so, and although she took it very gracefully and she was like, please don't tell me that. And she started crying. Like she doesn't want to face the fact that like her daughter's on that path, and seemingly probation and all of these different avenues are not working for her. But I don't think that should have never came out of my mouth, right? Like my job is to create a situation of hope, not hopelessness. So yeah.
Been there, done that. That's why I said that was the phrase "less than perfect day" came out of a very, very similar situation for me. I can remember it like it was yesterday, you know. And it's not the last one; it's just the one that gave birth to the phrase "less than perfect."
Right.
I have had them, and you'll have them, but I will tell you what has saved me is, and since you're 12-stepper, that higher power dude or dudette, whatever, covers our less than perfect days. And I've had those kind of situations come back on me where I'm like, God, I failed on that. And then I'll hear somebody online or something from 20 years ago say, man, you saved my ass that day. You know,
right.
Y'all pardon the French. I'm quoting, you know.
We like ass and shit. Remember we talked about that?
I know. Ass and shit are okay.
Thank you for sharing that, Kaylin.
Yeah.
So
thank you.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, really. But welcome. This is super, super cool. And I think that we need to figure out how do we go about creating these sessions and giving some of the staffs a chance to be a part of them. I can see that it would get so big that we'd have to do regional things and stuff like that. But I think it could be really helpful to a lot of folks out there. I don't think you're the only person at all. You know, I can name at least 10 times that people brought dope that I can name. I remember them, you know, plus there's the one that I'm too old to remember. But it happens. And what do you do when that happens? And then the parents pop back on you, and, you know, it's just the liability issues and all that kind of stuff. And how do you deal with your own well-being and your own spiritual serenity, you know, going through all this, that kind of thing. Very, very common. I think this could be really helpful. Y'all give me a little time and give me some input, please, on any ideas you have, what I'm envisioning, and if you have a different vision, I'd like to hear that too. What I'm envisioning is kind of with a little bit of a head time, maybe 2 or 3 weeks, we start telling all the members of the association that we're planning on doing a line training on families in crisis. A line training, that this will not be a speaking engagement or a webinar, that this will be interactive, and it'll be training that is particular to the program setting you're in, and that kind of thing, and maybe kind of promote it that way. And that'll give us a little time also to flesh out some more of the process. Does that sound like a plan?
Yes.
Y'all tell me if this is stupid, all right? If we ought not
No,
do
I think it's
okay.
I think it's amazing. I think that this could be super valuable to because there's a lot of new APGs popping up. Like I've gotten some phone calls over the last couple weeks of like, in South Carolina and New Hampshire and they just have nowhere to start. And I think having real life scenarios, because like what everybody else was saying, like you don't know till you're in it.
Oh,
You don't know how you're going to think and when you add all the other variables into that situation, like I had that day where there's 15 kids and half of them are yes and half of them are no. And, where's my spiritual fitness come into that day? And if you're lining up a scenario that's super specific to where you have people throw themselves in the middle of that scenario and how they would think during that time, that gives you so much more armor to like, not have to figure so many things out while it's happening. You already kind of are prepared as to like what that would look like.
Right.
I think it's fabulous.
Let me tell you another scenario, and Robin, you know about this. You remember this scenario. When your program gets bigger and their clinical elements come into it, it can get really, really hot on situations like this, and the managing clinical elements can make drastic mistakes on what they do behind that. Drastic mistakes. And so I can also see us developing some things for management on what do you do when, you're outing, somebody brings dope on the outing, and you have a staff member that knows about it. You know what I mean? Finds out about it, but they handle it on the line and they go ahead and go on. But then you have a parent calling an executive director, that parent that called you, thank God they called you, because there are some clinical executive directors that don't have a clue, who could make some really desperate, drastic mistakes in the decisions from that point. Not only are they drastic mistakes for the good of the program, they actually, in the end, are counterproductive to exactly what they're wanting to do. Because if you have an executive director that pops out and fires a counselor or something like that, you have just admitted, in a legal sense, some kind of failing, and opened the door for liability. And a lot of folks don't get that, and man, it's a big mess. So I can see some developing for these kind of things for management too, to where people don't feel like this is the first time that it ever happened, and God, this never happened with anybody else, etc.
I think that's a really important point, John, because there are some, like the guy that I'm talking to, who is clinical. He needs to know that, because those things are going to happen. It happens in every program. They have to know it. So yeah, I think that's a great idea.
I think it'd also be a good idea for me to haircut. Holy moly!
I know we're running out of time, but I have a question for Kaylin. How did you handle the kid that brought the dope?
So so I think one of the key things for her to see was the dynamic and the ability for the group to it was peer led. Like I was there to kind of facilitate it, but the kids took over, right? Like they had the conversation, they told them how each other was feeling. Like, so there was a lot of pressure on the girls that were that brought it, right? So there's that. And then when mom came, because this is not the first time, right? And then after all of that, when we had the processing group, when I asked everybody to sit around a table, we have a round table that we all sit around to like talk about stuff. And she was like, fuck you, fuck this group, I'm never coming, you know, super defiant. Like, I think it was around shame and guilt, and like, I think at this point, like, the half the battle is within her own self, where she doesn't want to be sober, but everybody else around her wants her to be sober. And it's just so much pressure as a kid trying to handle that, right? Like, understand why that's happening. And so, and so I talked to her with mom when mom came to pick her up. Because at that point I was done, right? Like, telling me to F off and all that stuff. Like, I was just done. Like, it's time for you to go home. Like, and so when mom came and picked her up, we talked about the situation, and she's just really defiant. And I told her, listen, like, you are more than welcome to come back, but when you're ready to respect the rules, right? And like, I just have like no tolerance rules, right? Which is like, you're not going to bring drugs onto the facility and jeopardize everybody else's sobriety, including my own, right? Like, and you're not, you know what I mean? Like, the disrespect and the telling staff to off and all that stuff, like, you're not going to do that. So, and we have different, so if it's the first time thing, we have character building exercises that we do. So one of them is, you have to write a rap about what it is that you did, why you did it, what you could have done differently next time, and you have to rap it in front of the group, right? So I have a booklet about this big of like several different, my husband is a program manager for a treatment center, and he got it in an MRT class that he took. So we took that stuff, so they can choose out of book what they want to do to make up for that, which that's their kind of like get out of jail free card, right?
Yeah.
So if they do that, and then the second time it's a 3-day suspension, you know, and we go through like, you know, talking with the parents, and then the third time it's a 1-week suspension, and then the fourth time, it depends, it's always case by case, but then we look at the fact that like, maybe you need a different level of care that we can't provide for you, because there's just, you're not ready to, you don't want to be here. So there's no reason for that. We're not going to be effective if the behavior continues like that. Now, if the kid is like continuously showing up, if they're continuously engaging in groups and activities, if they're talking about what's happening and what's going on, like, those things kind of go out the window, right? Because to me, they're willing. There is like this mustard seed of willingness that can at some point grow into something much bigger if we keep engaging with them, you know. And we don't, a lot of times it takes months for these kids to open up about what's going on outside of APG, what their home life is like, what's happening at school, like if mom and dad is getting high, like all these things come out over months and months of time. So, because our primary group is lower economical social household. Like, we have parents that work, you know, like I was talking to John about it a couple weeks ago, you know, we have both parents working 2 and 3 jobs. You know, there's no time for them to show up, you know, so anyway, I could go on forever.
Well, thank you for all that information. That was great.
Thanks. All right. We'll see y'all next week. Thank you. You guys, I love these things. I always, every week I go, oh, I hope I have something to share. I hope there's that. And then we get in it and it's like, it's a never ending story, you know, and you guys make it that way. So I so appreciate you joining us and everything. And we're going to have to talk, I'm going to have to throw it out to some of the folks who are watching the videos. Every once in a while, please come on in with us. You know, we got about 20 people out there watching videos. It's like, we want your input too, you know, that kind of thing. I know it's hard. There's so much to do and everything, but still, I think it's important. But I will think about this some, about process and presentation and getting the word out and that kind of thing. Y'all do it too, also with me. And I'd love to have your feedback. I thought that maybe next week we might talk some about interacting with clinical elements. I heard several times today talking about that. When do you refer? Who do you refer? How do they respond to you? Who works with you? Who doesn't? You know, that kind of stuff. What do y'all think about that?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. All right, I'll try and remember that. I'll talk to you guys
You guys
later. I
have
love
a
y'all.
great, yes, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.